Like to call the meeting to order, please. Can we just stand with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Okay, this is the third and hopefully final meeting regarding signage in the village. Let's see here. Can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Chairperson Graditor,
Here.
Mr. Louie, Mr. Hicks, Mr. Schimberg, Mr. Tuzinski. We have a quorum with Mr. Brown and Mr. Hirsch absent.
Okay. How about approval of the minutes, please? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? A second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any comments or corrections?
I have one suggested. Page 2.
Use your microphone.
On page 2 of the minutes, about 2/3 of the way down, the sentence begins, if existing tenants are allowed to have signage that is not allowed, the new tenants will not comply rather than could not reply.
Yep. Great catch.
Former editor.
Anyone else? Anything else? Is that it? You got Betty? That's it. Anybody else have anything, correction of any kind? Then I'd like someone to present a motion that we approve the minutes as amended. Okay, so I didn't say, does everyone accept the change? Do you gentlemen approve of the change in the minutes?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Then I'd like a motion, please, to approve as amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Beautiful. Okay, we have obviously no visitors wanting to address the ZBA tonight. So let's continue to new business. We have no new business. We'll go on to old business, which is continuation of review of and potential amendments to the sign code. And having said that, Director Witt, do you have anything at this point that you want to mention?
Just a quick intro, Chair Graditor, and appreciate that. As promised, with the packet, there is a chart that I put together looking at neighboring communities, Bannockburn, Buffalo Grove, Deerfield, Lincolnshire, and Northbrook, as well as ourselves, looked through their codes and picked out the major components for wall signs, since that's the topic we're working on. I mean, there are many other signs we could be dealing with, but at the moment we're just dealing with wall and or window signs. Where things are listed as not regulated, I could not find a criteria within their within each individual community's list of requirements. So I just listed those as not regulated. Certainly the ones that are not permitted are exactly that. They specifically say that a certain sign type or component of a sign is not permitted. Based on that, I prepared a chart which I believe everyone was emailed today, and apologize for the timeliness of it, but I did leave a copy at each desk location tonight, which pretty much gives there are 12 different criteria, 11 exactly, and a room for other criteria that I think are the critical items that we need to come to a conclusion on after a review of the existing signage at both shops of Riverwoods and Colonial Court, as well as hopefully everyone had an opportunity to take a look at our criteria versus the other communities that are listed in the chart. That's on page 1. And on page 2, I put together a list of different sign types. Almost every one of these are prohibited in one community or another. And I would like to get through that list tonight as well to see if any of those should be permitted within the village or whether we should exclude them specifically. What we're trying to do again is we're trying to get a cohesive look between the two shopping centers. I believe that's what the commission had decided early in the game here. And coming up with a certain criteria, even if we just say what we have in place is fine, I'm good with that. But I just want to be able to reinforce that, have some better language within the ordinance that we could use for future designs and for enforcement procedures. So from there, I'll turn it back to you, Chair, and let you lead us through this. Unless you want me to go item by item, that's fine too.
No, I think basically what we should do is go through the recommended sign criteria and then go through the types. And if we can do that, we can come up with some cohesive rulings that will make sense. So let's look first at the recommended sign criteria. And we start with, now what is the difference between, oh, I understand. Okay, it's a tenancy. The
Well-
maximum number of wall signs.
Well, maybe I can just interject some commentary on there to make it brief, though. An interior tenancy is anything but a corner unit. So an interior unit would have only a front facing the street and a back facing maybe another street, perhaps an alley, perhaps nothing. The corner tenancy would be somebody such as
The flower.
the flower shop, the old Panera shop, the Galaxy location at the very north end of shops. Those would be corner units. Most of the communities allow one wall sign per, but that's not true for everybody, per interior tenancy, and corner tenancies are usually allowed a secondary sign of a smaller stature for a corner unit. So they would actually have two signs. Our particular code says that the primary would be of a certain size and the secondary would be up to 50% of that. So what I'm looking for is there a concurrence that that is acceptable as we move forward, or do we want to make a change?
Okay,
What defines primary versus secondary?
Well, the primary is just, it would be the sign that's facing the street. As an example, the Med Spa basically faces Milwaukee, but it also has a south wall that has a secondary sign on it, which is smaller. And if you look at the other side there's a tenant that has on the north side of that building, there's a sign that faces the street, but there's a secondary sign that was brought in front of this commission several months ago, in which that particular sign was 50% of the size of the main sign. So as an example for Galaxy, the large sign, the primary sign would be the one that's actually facing Milwaukee. The secondary sign would be the one that's facing the detention basin.
does anybody have feelings about how we should limit the secondary sign, or if we should limit the secondary sign? Anybody?
Do we define it now in terms of?
Yes, we do. The primary sign, well, we define the primary sign by a certain percentage of the store frontage. It's either 8% of the store frontage or 80 square feet total. The secondary sign is limited to 1/2 of that size.
And the question is, does that make sense to you, or do you think we need to change it, or does anyone have any particular feelings about it?
I don't. I think it's fine. I'm more concerned about just all the garbage that they,
It's window signs, we'll get there.
yeah.
Anyone else? Then I guess we leave it the way it stands.
Very good.
Okay, then we come to sign area, maximum square feet, percentage of frontage, or per linear foot of tenant frontage. Which one of those do you feel most appropriate doing?
Okay, so if I can interject one more time. We do have, again, two separate but joint criteria. We go by a certain percentage of the store frontage with a limit of 80 square feet. And that's not uncommon for most of the communities. Only Deerfield specifically gives a maximum size, regardless of what the size of the building is. And Lincolnshire does not give a total percentage. So our percentage is it's fairly small. However, you look at the signs that are up there, and I think that they're adequate in size. The other piece that's on here that I can see didn't get added to our list is we go by, I believe, a 1 square foot per every linear foot of the storefront. So those are really the three methods that a community would use. I think maybe to help make a decision on this is if we go back to the original packets that were sent out that had the photographs of every one of the stores, if everybody felt that, my gosh, all those signs are way too big, then we would look at reducing these numbers. If everybody's comfortable with the size of the sign, then maybe we're good with it the way it is.
I assume none of us in the room have any.
No. Some communities are at 5% for Northbrook. Lincolnshire is at 10%. Buffalo Grove is at 33%. My guess there is, some of the properties are a lot larger. You're not as tiny. And then Bannockburn doesn't even show a percentage, but they go by the square foot per linear foot or a maximum size. So communities are all at different numbers.
One of the things you want to weigh along with that is visibility.
Is the
And
what? I'm sorry.
visibility. You want the businesses in both shops and Colonial Court to do business. And in both cases, shops because you come on it quickly, and Colonial Court because so much of it is hidden inside, visibility is limited for these stores. When you think about the size of signage, think about it with a visibility that will work as well. And, play that through and think about it, and then we'll try to get somewhere with it.
All right, and if I could add something to that, I mean, there's a lot to be said for your commentary. Some communities, what they'll do is they'll have a basic sign size, which is essentially what we have. And then I know in Glen Ellen, as an example, based on the distance that the storefront is from the main road that it's facing, if it's beyond so many feet, they will allow a 1 or 2 or 3% increase just to make the thing a little bit bigger, a little easier to see from the street so that people can get noticed a little better. So the question would be is, do we want to make all the signs bigger just because like Anytime Fitness is so far away? Or would we say everybody else is fine, but maybe you give Anytime Fitness a bump in the event that, somebody else came into that space?
My feeling, and this is just me, is that the signs that are up that already exist, we really shouldn't mess with. Like Anytime Fitness, for example. It's more to control what's going in and how it goes in. And I think we need to have a fairly rigid set of specifications only because they have to be enforced. And it gets tough when you're saying, okay, well, we gave them 3% 10 years ago, and what's going on now? I think that if the specifics are all the same, it will be that much easier to enforce. So I would not be in favor of adding because of distance, because, with shops, it's one thing, but with Colonial Court, everything is so in strange positions that it would be very difficult to get it set up in that way and enforce it, or my own gut feeling. Input from anyone else, please.
using Anytime Fitness as example, using Anytime Fitness as example, it's, the street is irrelevant, in my opinion. It's just because of its location and that physical layout of that Colonial Court. So that would have to be, in my opinion, it's not a distance-based conversation. It's something else, whether that's just, a variance conversation or something. But the roadway-based stores do have traffic that could be affected by distance to the road. That would be where I would personally say, it's not a unique to each store variance, so 8% plus 2% or whatever. It's to that entire mall, strip mall, to say every, in this case, because of distance to Milwaukee Avenue, it's an additional 2% for all stores. That's how I view it, rather than individuals.
Anyone else?
I don't have any problem with the way things are right now with the main signs. Is it too loud?
Oh, that was beautiful.
Okay. And we also don't want them to go, oh gosh, now we got to make a new sign. That's going to be,
No, I know I'm comfortable with the way it stands now, and I think it would be easiest to enforce. Betty, any thoughts?
Leave it the way it is.
Leave it the way it is? Okay, we're going to leave it the way it is. Sign height. And that's maximum inches, and sign length, minimum feet. Why do we have a minimum feet? What if somebody wants a short, squatty little sign?
I was just looking at the differential, most signs are short in height and long in length, so it was just easier to pick a number or a unit that works closer to the given length. So these two numbers are really the sign itself. It's looking at the start from the S in State to the M in State Farm. And it's looking at the height of the letters, or it's looking at the height of the double letters or the double rows of letters, whatever that may be. So those are the two criteria that we're looking at here. We have criteria for size of lettering, but we don't have a criteria for the height of the sign itself, I believe. We have criteria of 18-inch for the letters, minimum, 30-inch maximum, but we don't have a criteria in Riverwoods for the overall sign height. So if you had 2 rows of lettering, if you had State Farm, one above the other, we have no criteria to restrict what that vertical height would be. The letters within that height have a criteria, but if they decided to go to a 30-inch lettering, you'd have 30 inches for State, some space, 30 inches for Farm, and a little bit space above below maybe, and all of a sudden you've got a sign that's 6 feet tall, or trying to do the entire sign band versus the linear look that the storefront has got.
Could we say that with specificity that the entire sign has to be a certain number of inches, whether it's 1 line, 2 lines, or 47 lines?
You can set that, and that would be the maximum height that we're looking
Correct.
for. So
That,
if you want to say that the maximum height can only be as large as the letters, that would be one thing. But if you want to give some room for, maybe the first, 1 letter out of the whole thing, so like the S, if the TATE, and I'm sorry to pick on State Farm, it's just an easy one to do. If you took the TATE and you said those are going to be 18-inch, would you allow the S to go higher?
Well, if it was
higher than the
only 1
30-inch,
row,
or
if
I'm
it was
sorry.
only 1 row, I could see allowing it to go higher. If they want 2 rows of lettering, then you've got an aggregate.
Correct. So you have to look at what that aggregate is going to be permitted. And that's what we're looking at.
Okay. And would it be appropriate to say that the aggregate should be the same as the size of the large letters that we permit? if it's only one row? Would that work?
That could. You could say that the maximum height of the sign is going to be 30 inch. But then you could deal with, and then the way you would deal with it is when you have a logo that's applied to it, that logo could have a different dimension, which is what it does right now.
Right.
So that the logo for, say, Orange Theory is 52 inches, and that's what was allowed within the ordinance. So you could say that, we could do a logo of 52 inches and the rest of the signs at 30-inch max, regardless of what else is happening, what other kind of imagery that you've got, that you have lettering is one piece, and maybe you say that there's no double stacked letters. But if you make it as a 30-inch height, you could easily do 12-inch letter space 12-inch letter and have 2 rows. And then you'd have a smaller height for the overall sign. You'd still have the imagery that you want in the event that your business has 2 lines and that's where you want it. You'd still have 30 inches to incorporate that. What I'm not looking to do is say, okay, it's acceptable to have a 5-foot or a 6-foot high sign by saying my lettering is going to be 30 inch on the top row and 30 on
Correct.
the bottom. I think we should look at constraining that.
Right. And I agree with that 100%. And I think that, yes, the idea is if they want more than one line, it should not go over the maximum that we're allowing for letters for a sign.
So would you allow it to go only 30 inches, or would you give them more so that the individual letters would be a little bit higher? If you go to 30 inch, you're probably talking something like 12 to 14 inch letters versus the 18-inch minimum. So in that sense, then we have a little bit of conflict because you have an 18-inch minimum and you can't get that in a 30-inch sign. So the question would be is if you have 2 rows, would you allow them to go to a smaller lettering height?
Well, I think if we look at an aggregate, that's how we handle that.
So then maybe what we do is say, forget the minimum height and just say that again, some communities will just say, the size of the sign, no matter what you're putting on it, is going to be this high by that long max. And then you set the criteria as far as how the maximum length is developed. Some communities will take, the height between the top of the storefront and the top of the wall and say that sign is not going to be any more than half that distance. So if you have 4 feet from the top of the window to the top of the roof line, then your sign can be 2 feet and it goes in there. You see some wall below it, some wall above, and it doesn't look like it's all lettering instead of a building. That's what I'm getting at. So we have a sign freeze that's there, and I forget what the actual dimension is, although I have it in the book. Whether you want to say, okay, it's forget the minimum size and just say the height of that sign is going to only be no more than half of that, but your maximum lettering would only be 30 inch. So you could still get the sign height. If it's only a word, you would still get the same criteria as everything else and still have that continuity. But for those that want to have something additional on it, like we have some of them that have a logo or a symbol, you give them a little latitude to put that into that maximum height, and then the lettering is somewhat smaller. And then it fits within that rectangle that you're trying to contain them in.
That's kind of what I would like
Yeah.
to say. Because then you have some continuity of sign size, even if it's smaller letters for a more than one row and larger letters for in a single row. But the continuity will be the continuity of the actual sign is completed.
So then perhaps doing something like half the size of the distance within either the sign band or from the storefront to the roof line. You make that half whatever that flat surface is for the vertical height, and then the length is determined by this criteria that we have, that it's the lesser of the 8% of the store frontage, the 1 linear foot per foot of storefront, or 80 square feet. So you just end up taking whatever that number comes to, and you divide it by whatever that vertical distance is, and that's the maximum length you can go. And then your lettering is going to be somewhere less than 30 inches. It may not be 18, but it's going to be somewhere fitting within that rectangle that you've
It
created.
makes sense.
Yeah, that makes
Have
sense to
this
me.
visual where things are a little more uniform going
Yes.
across instead of having this and then this huge logo. And
Well, we may wind up with larger logos.
I get that, but
I didn't say
by and large, we're
huge.
trying to make it a little more uniform.
They're always going to try to find a way to maximize it. I mean, why set a minimum? They're going to try to find something to maximize that space. What is generally the distance between the top of the window and the roof line? Is it 4 feet, like you said?
You give me a second, I'll find out what we had.
But what you said, Steve, makes sense to me. Everything that you just said there.
I'm curious to, based on this conversation, what percent of the existing stores are compliant?
Well, that's actually, we'd have to go back to the original chart that I created,
Yeah, I think we
which
should.
has all of that labeled. I'm just looking
Because
for,
what I'm thinking is, one of our goals is to have a more effective aesthetics for these stores. Are we accomplishing that is what I'm curious.
I think we're not taking control of the ones that have already had
I understand.
hearings and been approved or been up for 8 years or 10 years.
Yeah.
And those we're never going to fit in with the stuff that we're limiting now. But everything new that comes in, we can have control and make it look good.
Yeah, or if there's a redesign of an existing store,
Exactly.
then they have to go through process.
Yes.
Do you think there would be any complaints about some new tenant coming and goes, well, he's got they're just grandfathered in, you know?
Unchanged rule.
Yeah, the laws have changed. When a new business comes in, it has to come in compliant.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. And there's no debate. I mean, they can come before this board and they have. The first time that happened, the gentleman looked up and he said, I know you're not going to approve this, but he was the sign company. He said, I know you're not going to approve this, but this is what the customer wants and I have to present it. And I said, well, you already answered your question because it was outrageous.
so if I can just pass around real quick, I apologize, I didn't make multiple copies of this, but just to refresh people's memories as far as what some of these signs look like versus what we're talking about, where you have some of these that take up almost the entire sign band with their image, and then some of them that are a bit smaller. So maybe just a quick glance at these would help refresh some memories. And then I'm going to pass around two more. If you take a look at the Singapore math sign, that sits probably close to the 50% of the sign band, which is between the two blue stripes. And then take a look at the edible arrangements sign next to it, which even exceeds that sign band. And that's the type of thing that I have concern over. So maybe 50% is not enough. Maybe you go up to 75% of the sign band. So at least you have a little bit of, architectural aspect of the sign band below it and a little bit above it.
Yeah, or the 75 or 60.
And take a look at how well the Anytime Fitness piece goes in for the size of the sign, even though they do have a logo in there. So if, Chair Greditor, if it would be acceptable to the commission, I could take a look at, I could take a look at it from an aesthetic perspective of my own and come back to the commission with a recommendation on the height, taking a look at which of these signs seem to fit well within that sign band and come up with a number that, where we can have the majority of these signs actually compliant without saying, this is good, these are all bad. And again, we have another one. If you take a look at the Koji sign, which is the one on the left, which takes up the entire height.
Were you suggesting Anytime Fitness use the space well? Was that?
Yes,
Yeah,
I think it fits well.
Yeah.
It has a good image
Yeah.
within that piece.
with enough space above and below,
Yes,
and it's visible, it's readable, it's readable.
that's certainly within, that sign would fit within that 50% category
Yeah,
with a bump for the logo.
exactly.
And I think that fits that space very comfortably, more so than many of the other ones, particularly like when you look at Koji and you see that it goes top to bottom.
The only thing is that I'd really like to get this together tonight so we can walk away from it.
Understood. But I think you're going to come back, this is going to come back at you one last time anyhow, because you have to have the language as this is built into
Correct.
the ordinance. And what I'm suggesting is I will just build that in. And you could always reject it when you go through your final review, if that's how you would allow staff to prepare that.
That sounds good.
Okay, I'm not trying to belabor the discussion on all of these numbers.
See, I'm looking at Koji and I have no idea what that is. Just like looking at that sign, I could drive past, that's their fault though. The way they designed that sign.
Well, whatever message they put on their signage, that's.
I don't care if they make it 1.5 times as big. I don't even know what that is. And I think they need to read it, but that's the fault of the company. I don't think it matters, but
I think the concept that we want to look at is, does the sign really disrupt the architectural look of the building?
And the Korean barbecue part of it's sort of okay. I'm not thrilled with the look and feel, but. But that, I don't know if we're regulating that either. In that case, they have 2 storefronts, correct?
There's 2 storefronts, but they have 2 storefronts as the building is designed, but since they occupy it, their frontage is actually double what the typical space would be. So I think they're at 40 feet instead of the 20-foot mark, but their signage would be based on 40 feet. Problem would be is that even though you go longer and longer and longer, if you did 3, you'd be at 120 and you keep going, your sign criteria is still going to stay at whatever that vertical height is. And you're not going to have this sign that's bigger than the sign band. I mean, you're sitting fairly away from me, but you see State Farm and you can see the architecture of the building, and that's at about a 50% rule versus what the barbecue place is, where it just blocks it and it stops and starts the look of the elevation of the building. And that's what my recommendation is that you at least see that building continue across and the sign becomes secondary versus the barbecue place where it's just like.
Yeah. Well, my point, and I think Flowers 21 has the same situation, but because you have 2 storefronts and you have 2 sets of signs, should we regulate that?
It's regulated by the fact, it is regulated. So if you're at 80 feet or 40 feet instead of 20 feet, they're allowed 40 square feet of signage. So if they had a sign at 20 square feet and a sign at 20 square feet, you combine those, they would be within that limit as long as they stay within the criteria for whatever you set for the height versus the rest. So yes, if you have like State Farm, which has got 2 on one side and 1 around the other, I don't think that that sign is obnoxious at all. It defines that State Farm goes from this point to that point.
Yeah.
But it does it with some sensitivity to the building itself. And that's what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I was getting towards, in the Korean barbecue situation, would it be, yes, you have a wider sign, you have more square foot because you have two storefronts, but you can't have two signs, you know.
And
have one?
and you could limit that too. If you wanted to say that, that's fine. You know, State Farm has got two signs, but it's a corner unit, so it's permissible.
Yeah.
Barbecue place, even though you would do 80 square feet and say that you could actually do two, I mean, you could have two individual signs that maybe one is the logo within that area and one is the name, you know, of everything else. It could be two individual pieces, but it's essentially perceived as one sign.
And that's what I mean. This, from a aesthetics perspective for Korean barbecue, is not attractive to me. Forget about the height or whatever. It's just too much information. It could be more effective with just one larger within the scale we want sign.
Right, but we can't control that.
I know.
But what we can control is how it fits within the look of the
In
building.
permitted space, yeah, or frame.
And the ultimate, the ultimate final size, when you take it with the two pieces too, I mean, that we can regulate.
Mhm.
But if they break in the middle, they break in the middle.
In a frame within a rectangle.
But it's beautiful to them.
Yeah.
That's why they bought it.
I don't know.
I agree there should be uniformity and where, like you said, Steve, and make it look all the same, you know, to make it look something that's pleasing.
Well, close. I mean, you're not going to get true uniformity because
No.
you're going to have different size letters in places
As long,
and you're going to have different colors unless we legislate that as well.
no, I don't think
So
so.
you're going to have colors that are differing and you are, and I feel the same way. But you're going to have, you know, smaller size, smaller letters, larger letters, even though we allow them a certain number of square feet and a certain height of lettering, maybe they don't want that. What if they want a smaller letter?
That's fine.
See, but that's why you'll never get complete uniformity.
Right. No, yeah.
Mhm.
I find that hard to believe that they would settle for smaller letters though.
But
They're
that's
going to try to
that's
maximize.
their prerogative. So would the commission be fine with us coming back with a recommendation? And again, what we could do is give examples from these two centers of where those numbers would be so that you could see that, you know, we're not being unreasonable with whatever the number is, that, you know, here's an example of something that would comply to whatever that number is, whether it's 50%, 75%. But I would sure recommend against doing something like 100% because you see how the barbecue
Right.
place, you know,
No, I would be
just-
perfectly comfortable with that.
Okay,
Okay.
so then we need to go to sign colors. Is that something that you would want to regulate? Here, even in this center, there's essentially two main colors that are used for the letters, red and white. I don't see anybody else that has regulated the color. They do regulate the color of light if there is light shining on it from the outside, but they don't regulate the color other than one community restricts colors to 3 and another community restricts colors that just so that they're not applied in a way that it would have an issue with any traffic patterns like, you know, simulating a red stoplight or green or a yellow caution. But I don't see that happening here because of the distance from the street.
And no, I would be comfortable not regulating color. Anybody else?
I totally agree. Yeah.
Okay. All right, then the next one would be illumination of the lettering. All of the lettering that we have in the shops in Colonial Court is all, I believe that they are all internally lit. They are some of them are channel letters. We don't allow bare bulbs. Some letters have the shape of the letter put in and then might put a neon light or some LED lights in there to shine out. We don't allow bare bulbs within the village, and my recommendation would be to uphold that. But I guess this question really goes to whether or not you would ever want to get to a point where somebody starts putting gooseneck lamps, shining it on the sign itself. And that's really the basis of this next question.
And
Internally lit or externally lit?
internally, as far as I'm concerned.
Internal is defined to the sign itself. It doesn't mean from the inside of the store out. It means internal to the signage, correct?
It would be that each letter, so like for State Farm, the bulb would be inside, but would be contained behind a piece of plastic so that you see that. The other piece that would go toward is, would you permit what they call a halo sign, where the back of the lettering is open and the light shines onto the wall, and essentially you have a dark letter against a bright background. That's another
Style.
it's another style.
Does that give more attention to that particular business?
Good.
Yeah,
It could give more attention to that than to any of the other signs that are in
that might, if you have one store that's doing that, you might look at that one only and not the others. I think they should all be uniform.
Yeah, my feeling is that the halos are
Okay.
a little bit flashier and a little bit uncontrollable, and I much prefer the internal lighting.
All right. And then the other piece that we have is we have a criteria that the letters are, I believe we have the letters to be individual and not what they call a cabinet sign. So in other words, a cabinet sign would be something that, this big box, and on a piece of plexiglass, you'd have the lettering painted and the light bulb would shine through, versus having each letter individually done.
I like the way we've been doing it up to now, and I think all of them, or pretty much all of them, are internal lighting.
Yeah, it looks like it.
And I'd like to stay with that, very frankly.
All right.
Me too.
The next item would be
Time of illumination.
time of illumination. Right now, our criteria is that the signs are supposed to be lit from dusk to the end of business hours. Some communities will give you a time frame, certain time, in the afternoon through evening hours. Obviously, if you have some businesses that are going to be open later than others, like I would assume that's a place like Baby Vegas or Anytime Fitness. Anytime Fitness is, I think, around the clock. So the question is, are we good with that being open all the time? I would suggest that if they're open for business, that it's appropriate for a sign to be there. But what you don't want to have is somebody closed for business and the lights on for another 3-4 hours. That, from an energy perspective, doesn't fly well. So most of the signs these days are all done on time clocks, either that or an astronomical clock to manage that time period that they're on and off. And the question is do we want to take it or maintain it the way we have it, which is currently from dusk to end of business?
We have dusk to midnight is what it says in our,
I'm sorry,
dusk to midnight.
is it midnight? Is that what we have on here? I apologize if I misquoted that. Yes, we have it till midnight. So the question would be do we want the signs burning? If a business closes at 9 o'clock, do we want it burning for 3 hours?
I'm wondering how they would feel though, even though they're not open. Someone goes by and goes, "Oh, I never realized there was which is the reason why it goes till midnight." But then you're talking about an energy thing.
Understood. And since we are, since we have another commission which is looking at things from a sustainability perspective, this is probably one of the few areas where looking at, the sustainability aspect of what we're putting up. Time clocks these days are easy to set, you can shut it off at end of business. An hour after business might be an appropriate thing too. But again, I feel a sense to ask, only for the fact that I know that we're looking at energy aspects of the sustainability review.
I would tend to, I was thinking an hour after close. Was what I was going through my head. But that also brings up, I'm assuming, and you mentioned it, that LED, a more energy efficient lighting is not excluded, like an LED lighting or something is not excluded in our regulations here.
No, it's not.
Okay, so that,
It's not. And you would probably find that everybody's switching to that anyhow, just from a cost perspective.
I just want to make sure. But I would propose that an hour post close.
With a maximum amount of hours. So if you've got a place that's open until midnight, I don't think they need an extra hour. So I would say, the hours that it's in operation, and we give them an hour at the end,
With a maximum time of midnight.
the maximum time of midnight.
But if Anytime Fitness is open 24 hours?
Well, but if you're saying an hour after business, if they're open 24
Right.
hours, then it's, doesn't
Then there isn't
necessarily
an
ever
hour
have to
after
shut off.
business, right?
So.
But I think that's what feels the most equitable to me. And again, this commissioners, tell me what your response is and what you think.
I was torn when you first brought that up, just because sometimes when I go down Deerfield from my house, I go, wow, I never knew that was back there. I can see that. I realize it's not open now, but now I saw it when I didn't see it before. If I was a business owner. But at the same time, do they really need it on? I'm not sure what to think about it. I'll think about it.
Anybody else, any more input here on that?
But they don't need it till midnight, you know?
But I would like it to be at least an hour after business close, just for the employees that are leaving at the time. A little more security for them,
Mhm, mhm.
more illumination.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with an hour after close. The only one that would really affect negatively is that funky little store that sells old things and used things. And have you seen that store? She's open, I think, 2 days a week.
She's open minimal hours, yes. But keep in mind, her sign, sorry, I don't have this
That's okay.
instantaneously
Most people don't
available.
even know that little store
Her
is
sign,
there.
I don't believe is internally lit. Her sign is essentially painted on a board that's stuck to the wall. So there is no internal light, so it doesn't matter for her.
Related.
Well, I said, I've never noticed her sign.
And that leads another question as to whether or not one feels that that's acceptable as well
Mhm.
too.
Because that's not uniform with everything. It's
Certainly
not-
is not.
Yeah.
And she is relatively new.
So you have the issue that you have two things we were talking about. You have the vintage to look at, and you have the ballroom dancing one to look at. This is an example of the cabinet sign. And then the question is would the commission be acceptable to or amenable to that type of sign still being here, because that doesn't go toward individual letters.
Hmm.
So technically, both those signs are in violation of the,
Mhm.
Mhm.
well, I shouldn't say that because it's colonial court and it doesn't
Have any
have something
regulations?
to be judged against. And that's why we're here.
Right.
If it were in shops, it would be in violation. But again, we're not looking at going back retroactively on those two particular signs, but you're looking at what we would want to approve for the future.
Move forward.
Not approve that, no.
Just looking at,
Doesn't fit.
no,
Not according to what we're working on
Right.
here anyway.
Intriguing. Yeah, I mean, looking at ballroom, I would, well, that could have been, it may be more expensive, I don't know. But having individual lettering would have been, could have accomplished the same message. I don't know if it would have cost them more money.
It would likely cost them more money versus doing all of that in individual letters and getting the logo done in an individual letter. So I'm sure that that was done from a cost perspective. But
Yeah.
again, is that what we want the overall
Yeah.
center to be?
No, I think my answer would be no.
So again,
Time of
What's-
illumination. Let's get that squared away.
please,
So from opening until 1 hour past closing, except limited by midnight.
got it.
that's fine with me, yeah.
All
And
right.
we get to letter type, block or script.
Now you can do script as individual letters, not an issue. All the block letters are individual. But the difference is, the question is you want to look at like State Farm as block letters, Anytime Fitness as block letters, the dance studio as a cabinet sign, and Vintage as just being a painted sign. Now, painted signs are not permitted. I forget which district. Is it in the shops?
I think shops forbids them in their specifications.
So the other thing that you would look at is, the large pancake on the south side of Brunch Factory is a painted sign. It would not be permitted in the future if you said painted signs can't be done.
Mhm.
Well, but if we're talking about illumination and we're talking about channel lit, then obviously a painted sign doesn't fit in either place.
Right. Then you're starting to look at external illumination. So if you've got a sign that you can't illuminate, that's bad for business, but it's a decision they would have to make. They're hurting themselves by not making an illuminated sign. So the question again at hand is, do we want it to be, we said already, internally illuminated is what we decided, no external. But the cabinet sign for the ballroom dancing is internally lit, but it's a cabinet sign, it's not individual letters. Do we want to continue with individual letters?
Yes.
And then just by that statement, if that's what the commission votes on, that would preclude Vintage from ever being repeated in the center because it's not individual.
Yeah,
Let's face it, it really doesn't fit with anything. And we're looking for some continuity.
yeah,
The comment that someone made at the last meeting was we shouldn't have, when we were looking at temporary signs, nothing that looks like it's hand drawn.
Mhm.
The Vintage sign looks close to that.
And that's what she was looking for that particular store.
And it probably fits her very well because the business could be very well suited like in downtown Long Grove or downtown Geneva or someplace that has more older things in it. And I'm not saying she shouldn't be where she is, but it has more that character than it does, the sleek look of Orange Theory, Anytime Fitness, or some of the others that are there. But it's not to say that she doesn't have the right to do that. I'm not trying to be critical about how anybody's designed their things. We're just looking to determine how we get uniformity is really the
Right.
purpose
And
of
this
any of
does
this
not,
conversation.
there's no way that illumination wise, letter shape wise, or anything does that fit. So I think it's going to be our black sheep in the herd. And not saying that black sheep are bad, I happen to like them, but it's going to be different than the rest of the
It'll be different.
signs and tolerated because she's already there,
Okay.
but not again.
All right. All right. Is there, if we can move on to lettering height, is there any objection to maintaining the heights the way we have it?
No, not anybody else?
No.
I have no objection.
Fine.
Okay, so we'll retain them.
Logos,
Permitted.
Permitted.
okay. But my question, which I didn't put on here, is
How big?
how many?
Oh,
Not how big. Well, how big is an issue too, but the how big would be regulated by that box that you're creating. You would still want that within that box, then your letter could be smaller. But the question is do you want to do a Jimmy John's that's got 3 logos?
no,
Suggest
one logo.
to go to 1.
Hmm?
I suggest to go to 1.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
I
agree.
suggest one
Again,
logo
we're
as
not
well.
going retroactive, but we're looking for here forward.
Right. One logo permitted.
Jimmy John's has 3 logos on it?
I believe it did. One of our stores does have 3, and I believe that Jimmy John's is here.
And then logo height,
Let me find that for you.
I think we have to say that it fits in with the actual size of the signage we're permitting.
Yeah, the permitted
One.
frame. Whatever you want to call
2,
it.
3.
I realize we're not going to go back to the tenants and say you have to redo your signage. Will we give them some indication that they are not in compliance with the current rules?
I don't think so.
No, I would not.
No, we're going to make enough waves with this thing. Let's not panic the ones that are in there.
There's no tenant.
Okay. Other criteria, is there something additional that anyone can think of?
I think the only thing that I would look at there, and I just don't know that it really is that big of an issue. You know, these tenant storefronts are anywhere from like 15 feet to 20 feet. The concern would be is how close to your neighbor's sign do you want a particular sign to be? Should there be a given distance between Jimmy John's
Yes.
and the smoke shop type of deal?
Yes, there has to
At
be.
least one community had put 6 feet for a distance.
I don't think we have 6 feet here.
And but I'm raising the question just for conversation.
No.
Is there an assumption that the allowed rectangle is centered on the storefront?
No, I don't think that's one of the,
I haven't seen that criteria in other communities. I think it's pretty much in most locations, it's a given. However, if your entry is offset,
then you want to offset.
you
the
want to
sign.
give them the flexibility to have it toward where the entry is. But
But
if you're trying to define what your territory is, you're going to probably want to put it right in the middle.
Yeah.
So the question is if you're going to jam yours right over your door, you know, i.e. smoke shop, it would be about 2 feet away from, if you put that smoke shop sign right to the edge of the door, you'd end up being about 2 feet off the Jimmy John's sign.
Yeah.
And then what I'm looking at is the rambling on of it, and you know, you don't know where one starts, one stops.
But if-
Jimmy John's is centered on their space, and a smoke shop is centered on their space, and there's probably a good 5-6 feet between, easy.
Yeah, and if all signage were centered on the storefront, not the entranceway, et cetera, it would give you a more consistent look and feel with height and width and everything else,
It would.
which is kind of an objective,
So
so.
let's put a minimum specificity between signs. And just say a minimum length has to be maintained so that the sign is located in such a way above the business that there will be 4 feet, 6 feet. That I don't know.
All right, how about if I do this, okay, since I've got nothing else to do? I could take a
Sure.
quick look at what there exists within the signage now and just put a number that's not larger than the smallest,
Mhm.
and maybe that works, but in the 5 to 6 foot range,
Yeah, that's what I think.
It sounds good to me.
5 or 6 foot range from the edge of your storefront.
or I'm looking at between signs is what I'm
How do I
looking
know
at.
what the next tenant's gonna do?
We don't know.
Yeah.
But you're gonna go up against something that's existing and do this, design yours accordingly.
So I have tenant A has 5 foot space past their frame. And now tenant B has to work from the next 5-foot space.
No, I'm saying you're looking at between the end of, say, Jimmy John's to the start of the S in the smoke shop. That's the distance I'm looking at here.
Okay.
So there's a separation so people can differentiate.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like one long word.
Can you
And
pass this
I
down?
still like centered in space and then, but that's, I
Except sometimes that's difficult.
don't know.
Take a look at this photograph and you might be able to see better what I'm talking about.
And then we're going to go on to the next chart. Because I
Yes,
think we've
please.
satisfied that one.
And I would perhaps let you
That's
lead
pretty
through that.
close.
What was that?
So I can let you lead through that if you want. If
Well,
not,
I
I'll
can.
continue. I'm fine.
I mean, this is very simple. This is a whole bunch of different things. And are we going to allow them or are we ain't, basically? And so you've got a permitted yes or no and a quantity and remarks. Now, I have to tell you that having read the entire list that's here, I would put a big no on every single one of them. Don't think I saw one that I would be comfortable. I know neon doesn't work, painted doesn't work, portable doesn't work. Projecting, we've already said no. I don't know what a reader board is.
I'm sorry.
What's a reader board?
It's the board where you have the interchangeable letters that you
Oh, okay.
Oh,
shove in.
yeah, no.
You know,
Oh,
things
well-
change day to day type of deal. It's kind of like,
A menu board or
it's an
something
old
like
timer's electronic message board.
Yes.
So this is storefront, is that?
These
fair?
are things that would be storefronts. Some of
that?
these,
Many on the window.
So digital or electronic, why would we exclude those?
Well.
most of them
digital,
have a habit of having flashing or blinking.
Right, neon signs.
Or
type of
moving.
signs.
But-
And
Yeah.
the other piece is they technically become bare bulb,
Yeah.
which we're not permitting.
Okay,
Okay, so if you look at them, advertising flags, we
The-
kind of don't.
What is A-frame?
The A-frame is the little
Thing outside the door?
sidewalk board
Oh,
that the only one that we have is, I believe, Koji has got theirs. You know, it becomes an issue that you got to move around. It's just additional. It's like a window sign. It's not a window.
It's a
Mhm.
sidewalk blocker.
mhm, yeah.
Sidewalk sign. It's a
Yeah.
sidewalk sign is what it ends up being. The
Okay,
animated signs are things that, you know, have any moving parts. The attention gets to things like the flutter flags. It could be balloons. It could be streamers. Some communities have restrictions on audible, though I've never heard one. But at least 2 communities have restrictions on that. Banners end up being temporary, and I want to talk about temporary when we get through the list. The changeable message is something that, you know, every 10, 15 seconds, a new
being flashes up.
message flashes on it. Decals would be things that are stuck to the window. Digital are more, you know, images that change, kind of like you'd find like maybe in a
A
store.
little man walking,
I'm sorry,
and three pieces of a neon where a little man's walking.
something like that, or you might be like, you know, a travel agency that has an image of, you know, it's Greece one minute, it's Paris the next, and it's all these photographs that are going in there. The electronic signs are more the old light bright type of things, if you remember that age group. Flashing lights, things that are, you know, going on and off. Some neons do that. Some people have those lights almost like, you know, flashing holiday lights. We talked about the fluttering or wind driven. That's more for signage that's in the right of way. And we've had numerous cases of that. Hand drawn signs, we know what those are. You know, it's somebody just slaps something together and, you know, here's my menu of the day or my hours. You know, we want something that looks a little more professional. The inflatables, you know, that's that wiggly guy in the taco commercial that he's always going constantly. It's just another attention getter.
Mhm.
Moving signs or anything that rotates or changes position. Neon signs, we all know what those are.
how's an open or closed sign.
I'm
or
sorry?
Opens. Is,
I would suggest that you could do open or closed type of signs, but the question is whether or not you want that to be out of neon.
yeah,
You could put an open closed sign and it doesn't have to be neon. The problem with neon is it's a bare bulb and it can be an annoyance. You know, it causes glare. And I think that's why most communities don't approve it.
so a typical retail open sign, besides being printed, would be what? LED today?
There are LEDs. There are signs now that have the look of they have the look of neon. I forget what they call them, but they're like a faux neon, but it's done out of LED. It doesn't have the glare. It's got the brightness, but it doesn't have the glare of the bare bulb.
And we're excluding LED from bare bulb just because of the technology is sort of.
No, I would say the LED has a light inside something that's got a translucent surface to block the direct
not
view
there.
of it.
Okay.
You know, an LED light is probably one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most obnoxious things to directly look at because they are so bright.
Yeah.
You need something, I think, to diffuse them. And a lot of new headlights on cars are very difficult to drive in front of.
So if LED were on this list, then we would include it.
I'm not opposed to the LED, but what I'm opposed to is it being bare bulb.
Yeah, understood.
Because the LED is a good thing from an energy perspective.
Yeah.
You know, you could have an LED, an exit sign. An exit sign will take less than 5 watts or less to run that versus putting a 40-watt light bulb on it.
Mhm.
So you're looking at it from an energy conservation perspective, which is great, but that's guaranteed that's LED in back of it.
That's like.
All the exit signs are going to have that. I'm sorry?
Isn't that a canned light?
But it's individual letters. I don't know. So.
Yeah.
Good point. Painted signs, you know, that ends up being like vintage. Portable signs, things that are just movable. Projecting signs are things that would be beyond the face of the building. Most communities limit that to 12 to 18 inches. I don't have an issue. You have to have some distance that sign's actually going to be off the wall by the time you put the raceway and then the letter itself, but it's usually restricted to be 12 inches or less. The reader board we talked about, anything that's reflective becomes a nuisance when, you know, you're driving up and you see that reflecting back at you. Roof signs are not permitted now. I wouldn't want to see us go to doing those. A swinging sign, again, is something that's moving. Temporary, we'll talk about in a second. The translucent background, which would be something where the, you know, you're actually looking at the sign lit from kind of like the front going backward, and you're looking through the sign to actually see this lettering. Window sign, or let's go to window trimming. It's where you're taking a window pane and you're trimming it with a neon light or holiday lights. I'm not saying we're restricting holiday lights here, but to have that type of light as a permanent thing 365 days of the year, that's what we're trying to avoid. But I think the biggest thing we need to look at, I think the thing that would help this shopping center the most is to either totally get rid of or limit the window signs to no more than 1 or 2 window signs, and then limit what the size of that would be. Some communities do a temporary basis. They might allow a temporary window sign for maybe 4 to 6 events a year. It can only be up for 2 weeks at a time. So if they're having a special event and they want to change that and let people know, I think that's appropriate to be drawing business in, but for that to be there on a regular basis every day of the year, considering we had one business here that's got over 20 individual window signs, it's just a little much.
Mhm.
But if you did go to window signs, I would suggest that we restrict the area that the size of the window pane can be covered. And I've seen it anywhere from 25 to 50% of that area. It's appropriate. You can still look in. It doesn't overshadow the entire facade of the business. and it allows people to see inside the business and see what's going on. So you can understand, yes, it's a restaurant. No, they have clothing in there, or it's a dance studio, or it's a fitness place. But where you have like the flower shop that's got 3 of the 4 window panes that are end to end, nothing but covered up. How do you see inside? I think the business would do better if people could see the product inside and understand that, hey, they do some really nice things inside here.
And Galaxy would totally have to redo their windows.
And then Galaxy's a different story in a way. Yes, I agree that there's an issue there. We have to make a decision with regard to what's a shade and what's a window sign. Them I look at as those are window signs.
Yeah, me too.
Because they're advertising food product on those. And I would suggest that becomes a window sign versus a shade.
Yeah, that's a window sign. For sure.
Besides which, I'd rather look in and see people sitting and eating and enjoying their food than see a photograph on a window.
Well, and I suggested that to him, and he rejected me because he says in one breath, nobody knows I'm here. I said, well, then open your shades. Well, at 2:00, it's hard because the sun's coming in and nobody wants to see. I go, well, then take your pick. Do you want people to know that you're there, or do you want it being dark on the inside of your space?
But he has them down all the time.
And he's got them all the time.
That's a sign.
And some of them have them down all the time because then you don't want to see what's actually going on inside the business. My thought.
I don't think it
Off
looks
the
good
record.
to begin with, but
And it's also a safety issue, very frankly.
It is a safety issue
Yes, no
because from a
question
first
about
responder perspective, you want to be able to see what's happening inside the space, whether it's business hours or after hours. Personal opinion, and I'm talking to many different first responders, whether it's police or fire, they want to be able to take a flashlight, look inside and see what's going on, particularly after hours. How do you know that an employee didn't slip and fall? How do you know that somebody's not camped out overnight? Do you want to respond to that space? They get a call for a disturbance at a given store and they walk up and they can't see inside. So they're going in totally blind.
And if they get an emergency call and they have to go in and they don't know if there's a man with a pistol standing inside because they can't see.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
it's
And
also.
this is Riverwoods. That will never happen. We know that. But we hope it never happens. And if it does happen, we'd like to protect our first responders.
That's why we call it planning.
Yes, that's what
also
we're
Thinking
doing.
ahead.
But this is realizing we're not going to go back and renegotiate with the tenants.
We are gonna go back at window signs because right now window signs are not permitted. So
Okay.
we are going back on that.
Okay, all right, that's kind of.
So there is no stopping that from happening, in my opinion.
Okay, so Flower 21 is a safety issue, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And it's a violation of.
In
the
Galaxy.
In Galaxy, yeah.
So we need to work on those. So I guess the overarching question is all right, is there anything on this list that people feel that we would want to maintain?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I
do
think
not
they should
either.
all be no too.
Is there a way to limit the use of sunshades to just
Are you in
certain hours
Hmm.
when the sun comes in those windows rather than?
Yeah, no, I can
saying never-
understand why that would be necessary, but it can be a sheer piece of plastic. It doesn't have to be photographs of
Oh,
the
Yeah.
product inside.
Yes.
It could also be translucent in to some degree.
Vertical
Right.
blinds,
You
mini
could
blinds,
come
a
up
lot of
you could
things.
come up and say, it has to be 40%
Yeah.
opaque or something, so that maybe you have this decal, maybe you have a window tint to help reduce the sun.
Hmm.
Again, a sustainability energy perspective, we're going to reduce the heat gain inside the place, but without sacrificing the safety aspect and allowing people to see what the activities are. So if we want to look at something like that, I would support that.
I would too.
I would too.
But again, I think we want to go back and I'd like to hear from the commission your thoughts on temporary window signage.
Severely limited.
Keeping in mind that window signs, things like business open type of thing, I think that those are appropriate.
Yeah.
Use that door type of deal. Some of that signage, there are some building code issues where if you have a thumb turn lock or a cylinder lock on a door, they have to have signage saying it's got to stay open during a certain time. You might have an accessibility sign. Things like that, I think, are very appropriate. But when we're looking at things that are trying to advertise the business, the temporary window sign issue is really what I'm going toward.
Well, then let's look at the difference between signs that are providing some piece of necessary information and signs which can be construed as advertising. I mean, if the sign says open, or if a sign says door swings, and
Right.
I've seen those, and with the wind, we do have those. Things like that I can see allowing. But then again, we still have to limit the number thereof. Because if they've got half a dozen signs and every one of them is making another statement, then they've got the same occluded window that they had before.
But I think if you really think about it, if those are required, then they should be, even if you're repeating it on multiple doors. But I think what you're looking at, based on your comment, would be, the cigarette shop having the Marlboro guy in the window.
Mhm.
Okay, that's a window sign.
Right.
That's the
an
type of thing
advertising.
we're looking
It's
at.
just like right now, they've got one, I believe, that says, "We sell Jewel."
Right.
Well, people can walk inside if they want to buy Jewel and say, "Hey, do you sell Jewel?"
But if I'm a retail owner and I have a sale and a 25% off or buy one, get one free or something, is that permissible?
But this is where some communities go to temporary signs. So many events a year, 4 to 6 is what the other communities are doing. And you can have that sign up for maybe 2 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it is. And then you can't repeat such a sale for 14 days or so many days, so that you don't have, in essence, okay, I'm going to change out the window sign. I'm only going to have this window sign up for 2 weeks, yet I'm going to do 26 of them throughout the year, and the window is blocked every day of the year.
Like Menards?
Kind of like. So, it gives an opportunity for exactly what you're talking about, to have those individual sales. Something like that I see as appropriate. But it limits how much you have of that.
Yeah.
And the communities, the best community that I saw in here is that they require a posting date. So if you're going to put it up on March 1, the bottom corner, you have to post March 1. And that way the enforcement officer can go by and go, sorry, this was posted March 1, you're beyond it, take it down, beyond whatever your limit is. And that's how they would know, even if they weren't there at the time that the window sign went up, and you wouldn't necessarily have to have a permit issued every time it happens. But if you go by every 2 weeks and you look at that, it's an easy way to enforce.
What would you,
Makes sense.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, the question is how, I posted it on March 1st, how long do I get to keep it?
2 weeks,
Right.
maybe.
So then that's what's got to be decided.
Yeah, I would
Is
say
it a
2
30-day
weeks.
deal? Is it a 2-week deal? Is it a whatever it is?
what would you think about Singapore math, that one picture where it has all the lettering all over the windows? Would that be limited? Would that have to, like this one? Yeah, no.
That's not theirs though, just so you know.
In my mind, it should not.
That's legacy signage. That's the store they took over. That's not theirs.
What's it?
But look at the sign,
The
CB.
thing is, those are decals and those are permanent.
Yeah, okay.
And what we're saying is those shouldn't be there.
Correct.
But if you had a sale, you could put something up in the window, it would be there for a short, in a defined period of time. And it would have to be taken down at the
And it
end of
could only
that.
cover X percent of your window or something.
Right. Communities have anywhere like 25% of the window area, maybe 50% of the window area. They have different criteria than how big that could be.
And there would only be a certain number of times per year that they could do that.
Yes.
Because even if you say 2 weeks and they have one every other, I mean, the first 2 weeks of every month, that's not what we're looking for.
Right.
So what would we limit it to? We could limit it to 4 a year.
All right, as an
go
example,
6, but-
Buffalo Grove, if you look at the large chart,
Look at them.
Buffalo Grove, they allow people to do 42 events per year, 32 square feet maximum, which is fairly large. That's like a 4x8, but 60 days maximum throughout the course of the year. So you pick out whatever those 60 days are going to be. If you're taking 4 events, you're talking 20 some, you're only talking 15 days a time that you could do it.
Yeah.
Then if you're looking at Lincolnshire, they give 91 days a year, no more than 6 times, but the minimum time period between events is 14 days. So again, it's not like you've got this temporary sign becoming a permanent fixture, even though the text would change, the image would be there without this limitation. And then Deerfield just limits the temporaries to 20 square feet. So that would be like a 4x5 sign. Other communities on the temporary window sign area on the next line down, you can see people are going between 25% of the window area or 50%. But again, that becomes, they look at that as an individual window pane.
I would tend to go closer to Lincolnshire would be my,
Bannockburn has any number of signs allowed?
Yes,
Wow.
they don't have restriction on it.
I find that difficult.
So maybe some of our businesses should go to Bannockburn,
Mhm.
off the record. Thank you.
Lincolnshire's is palatable, excuse me.
yeah. If I'm understanding it, the math here. So is it, I could do 6 times a year, not to exceed 91 days, so each event can be up to
15
91
days.
No, all of it, total.
Or is that a total?
That's a
Total.
total. That's a total number of days. So
For
you
the
could do
6
6 events times 15.
Yeah,
So you're essentially 2 weeks, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
Yeah.
So you've got this temporary sign that's up there for 50% of the year.
But if it's 91 days per year,
Actually, I take that back because that only gives you, that'd be 25% of
Correct.
the year.
correct,
25.
which isn't dreadful. That wouldn't bother me.
Oh, it keeps you being refreshing and keeping it current. Smoke shop would have fun.
And the idea is if they're not having sales or if there's not a reason for them, then maybe there shouldn't be temporary signs permitted. Those are usually cardboard signs that they lay in the window. And most of them, that's what I've seen.
Be part of the 91 days that are allowed.
Correct.
So they would be able to have sales signs from the high school, as an example.
But most of those community event things are when you enter, then you see it on their board, not through the window. I mean, most of the restaurants I see, like you have to enter the restaurant and then you see like there's a professional wrestling event, and
A lot of places will
Somewhere.
post what Jerry's talking about is they'll post that in their front storefront windows. So when people are doing their window shopping, they'll see that. But communities would restrict that by saying, okay, that can be up, but it's got to be taken down within 5 days of the end of the event or 2 days or the following day or something like that. So that doesn't become another permanent fixture.
Well, and it would seem to me that not every store in a shopping center is going to be putting up temporary signs for a sale or something like that. And if you get one of those signs in half the windows in a shopping center, you don't need to get it in every one. So I don't know how much of a disadvantage that will cause.
Maybe you have a line item for community related content and
Yeah, we could do that too.
Yeah.
That if it's a not-for-profit community event, we will permit those signs to be in the windows for
7 days or.
more than that. We can be real generous on our charitable things because they need all the help they can get and we want to give it to them.
So why don't you limit it to like 30 days max?
Okay,
gotta be
30
taken
days
down
max would
within-
do.
Got to be taken down within 5 days of the end of the event, but you got 30 days max. It can be up.
Well, actually, I would like to have it taken down the day of the event. It doesn't have to go past an event.
And
They're
what
not going to
happens
be
if it's,
raising funds the day after the event's over with.
except if you're like vintage and they're not open?
That's true.
I'm trying to keep people from being out of compliant,
Right. Okay,
you know,
we can do that.
and I have no
And-
problem with building
And
that
just
in.
make it an exception for
An exception to the rule on temporary signs.
community and not-for-profit events.
But should you limit that though? You still don't want a advertising billboard across.
And they're not going to do that. They come with these cardboard things that are, and they say, hey, can you hang
Usually like-
this in your window?
Yeah, they're
Okay.
usually
Yeah.
not that big.
I see those all the time.
All right, so for the temporary, would you want to mimic what Lincolnshire has got for a time period? Would you want to go something less like Buffalo Grove has got?
I'm good. I work for Lincolnshire.
Yeah, I'm
All
okay
right.
with that. That's a good start.
And then what if you mimic the area, no different than them, and that gets 25% of the window area, but limits the number to only one?
Yes.
Yes.
So if you
Yes.
had like Galaxy that's got like 6 or 8 or 10 panes of windows, you're not going to get 10 times 25%. You're going to get one at 25%.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right.
So again, we minimize how much
This,
is there.
this works well, actually.
Okay. All right. So that kind of concludes going through all of this. And I guess what I heard is that with the exception of these temporary signs, these two for community events, not for profit, and mimicking what Lincolnshire is doing, am I hearing that we don't want to do any of these other that are on this second page?
Right. I agree.
Right, absolutely.
Then I have enough at this point to take this back and work with Attorney Hoover and modify this, and we'll modify some of the other language that's there that we're not specifically going into. This helps tremendously, but I visualize bringing this back to this commission for final blessing to make sure everything's been incorporated. Be no different than going through the minutes to make sure that everything is incorporated the way you felt. If that's good, then we would take it to the village board.
Absolutely.
With someone like Galaxy, they could possibly, I mean, I'm not saying, they have to comply by the rules, but they could move. They're
They have
upset.
they have a lease. That's their business and the landlord's business.
Some
Yeah.
of these properties would like a reason to move.
They also highlight themselves more than anybody by doing that.
The one thing that we'll have to work on is what our time period is going to be for compliance.
With the what?
What the time period for compliance is going to be. So like if people have, a neon sign that's hung, it'd take me 5 minutes to move it.
Yeah.
I unplug, I take it off the hook and I put it in the storeroom.
Yeah.
That's a different compliance versus Galaxy having to yank all their shades type of deal. So there might be a thing where we look at, window signs that are paper type of things. So, we give them 30 days, get rid of it all. And something else might need a little bit more time. But I think over time is the concept that over a minimal time period that we get to place in a compliance. And we're not looking at necessarily compliance with any of these regs that you're talking about being new. We're trying to get This helps me, but we want to get it in compliance with the ordinance as it sits today for the temporary stuff, and the rest of the rest of this is moving forward.
When these guys are going to get a letter too.
Oh, I'll get a letter, and yeah, and
So
I'll get a second
Is
letter.
there a colonial court conversation that has to happen with Bruce Savard relative to,
I'm sorry.
is there a colonial court conversation that has to happen with Bruce Savard relative to now imposed?
Sure, because what we need to do is we need to figure out a way on how we're actually going to make this work with the, between Colonial Court and shops, because we have the issue of the special use.
Yeah.
And we have to craft how we can meld all of that together. So not positive how that's going to happen, but we believe we can make it happen.
That's why Savard gets the big buck.
Yeah,
I mean, isn't a month enough?
for most of it, yes.
Yeah. I mean, the neon sign with the,
Again, it's unplugged.
yeah, just, I mean, they're giving them a month and then scratching that stuff off the window for Singapore. Okay.
They're looking for final occupancy inspection tomorrow.
Oh,
And
okay.
That's, I know that's already off.
But people
I've
like
seen it
that,
off.
let's say it's another one that has stuff like that. A month is enough, you know?
That's because it's free spells here.
Yeah, so lose free smells.
Of course, they will wait till the 29th day to worry about it.
But I'd like to add that this has been a monumental task. Director Witt has kept us informed and ready, but the commissioners have been a joy for me to work with on this, because you really have had input for me and input for yourselves and input for him and input for the signs. And it's 9 o'clock and we have finished with wading through a whole lot of mud together. And I really appreciate it.
And likewise, from our perspective, I appreciate everybody's input. And, the end product is going to be a culmination of all our discussions. So
And this
hopefully
will
we,
actually
hopefully we
become-
hit it right
yeah.
on the first time. But again, when it does come back to you, we're certainly going to want to take a deep dive into it, make sure it's what you feel we want it to be. If I've missed something, hey, I'll own up to it and we'll tweak it. But I've got enough to move forward.
Yeah, no.
I thank you all.
Everyone did a remarkable job.
Yeah, and I do want to commend Director Witt. He did a comprehensive, a lot of work. A true professional at what you do.
Well,
It's a
thank
lot
you.
of work.
Thank you for your kind words. It's just what we do.
Is there anything else now? I don't know what the date of the next meeting is. Okay, so our next meeting is September 11th.
We do have, I will have to say, I don't have a prepared report. I do know that we have a house on Hiawatha that's looking for a variation on a garage. This has been in discussion for months on end. We were supposed to have drawings, I think, 2 weeks ago, Vivian, and still, I'm sorry?
They are still working on it.
Yeah, it still hasn't gotten here, so I have no clue as to where that'll be within your schedule. But that's the only one that I'm aware of at the moment that's looking for a variation, other than the mini horses. And the mini horses, and I know they've emailed me again, it goes beyond just describing what the horse is. What our issue is that we're trying to craft language for is how we're going to protect the woodlands and the wetlands that these little critters are going to trample all over and destroy. So we're trying to settle on how we craft language for what the criteria for corralling them outside of woodlands and wetlands is
It's
going
more
to be
than
to
that.
make it.
It's more than that. This
it
one will go before
work.
the village board. This will not come to us
Yeah.
because it's a text.
It's a
amendment
text amendment, but
rather than a
yeah, I
variation.
think you're correct, but it started because
Because
you
she
were
questioned-
semi-involved within
Yes.
it, and I guess I'm just updating where that's at.
Yeah, she has contacted me.
It started
No, she wants to do therapy with children with mini horses.
This is one
Too many
particular
horses.
person.
Yeah.
It started as a request for variation, which is why it sticks in my head,
it
variation.
did.
But you are correct. We're going for text amendment and we are working on crafting that.
Right, and the things that need to be paid attention to from somebody who has a little bit of understanding of equines is they want to make sure that this is miniature horses only and not equines, because people are going to start wanting to bring in burros, and I got to tell you something, they're loud. And anybody who has a jackass for a neighbor, indeed. So that
No
has to be
comment.
a specification of this thing. That's a biggie.
Yeah, nearly 5 acres. How many horses do I get? Like 8?
The person who's trying to get this
No.
done has 7,700 square feet. And in order to have 2 horses, she needs 80,000. So she's 3,000
Way.
feet short. Didn't realize that when she bought the house. She's a nurse who's retiring and wants to do therapeutic work with children with miniature horses. So she had contacted me actually and asked what she had to do to get a variation. And as we followed it through, it turned out that it's not a variation because she doesn't fit the criteria that we have of extreme hardship. I mean, this isn't an extreme hardship. It's something she would like to do in the
Mhm.
future, but it does not fit
Right.
for a variation. Therefore, the only way she can do it is to get a text amendment on the equine part of the farm animals ordinance of the Village of Riverwoods.
So David, to answer your question, there will be a limitation on the square footage for the property, but it will be less than 80,000 for the thought that the animals are extremely smaller.
36 inches tall.
Yeah, they're extremely smaller than the others. They're the size of a large dog. So the size of the animal versus the area, we felt that some reduction in that would work. And what we're also trying to look at is what number would work for other properties besides the one that's asking.
Right, because
Because
the
it doesn't
size
make
of other
sense to do a
properties has
text
to have a
amendment for
limitation.
one property.
So you are going to permit it? You are going to let it go through, or how does?
It goes to the
Goes to the
board.
board.
We have nothing to do with it because it's a text amendment, not a variation. And so this woman, nice lady, has been emailing me constantly. And I send copies of the emails to Director Witt. And the last one, I responded to her that since this is a text amendment and not a variation, it's beyond my purview. So talk to Director Witt. He knows more than I do.
I hate to be harsh, but buy another house, you know? I mean, you should,
Just bought this one.
yeah,
And
I
they
know,
bought
but
it assuming it was big enough for 2 miniature horses. Yeah, so
you know,
we'll throw it out. Either they're going to approve it or they're not. And if they're not, then she can't have her miniature horses. And if they are, then she can. I would love to have a miniature horse, except
yeah, I mean, but you're not
I
going
have
to,
one of those, thank you. And I have the acreage to have a miniature horse. However, I'm beyond the age of pitching manure. It just is beyond me. And dragging hay bales and all the rest of it.
I'm just saying,
Okay, is there anything else that needs discussion here?
is that garage you're talking about just an individual person who's trying to put a big garage on a piece of property?
We actually have 2 that are looking at it, come to think of it. They are very restricted. One is a very restricted size of the lot, and the other is trying to expand the garage. But there's an issue that the existing garage is non-conforming. So there's the issue of setbacks that have to conform versus the rest of the house.
Mhm.
So therefore, there's this request that may come forward. But again, until it shows up, it's not in existence. But they've been talking about this probably for 9 months or more.
Oh my gosh.
So
We could
Anyhow.
have given birth to a garage.
maybe coming down the pike, maybe not. Sorry to get everybody excited if it don't.
Okay, is there anything else that we need to I think not. I have no message except I'll see you guys next month. So would someone like to make a motion for adjournment?
Motion for adjournment.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you all.